This is TradeFlow News, bringing you relevant news and insights from around the world. TradeFlow News, enabling trade for SMEs and economies worldwide.
These are some of the key topics that we will be looking into in today's program.
First, let's take a look at the overnight headlines which are impacting the commodity markets.
Oil slid further on Thursday after dropping sharply from more than 3-month highs in the previous session as a U.S. government credit downgrade weighed on sentiment, while concerns around supply tightness provided support. Ratings agency Fitch on Wednesday downgraded the main U.S. credit rating, reflecting an expected fiscal deterioration as well as a high and growing government debt burden. The downgrade hit investor risk appetite, pushing oil and global stock markets lower. Since oil had a steady rise over the past month, it was ripe for a pullback. The oil market will remain tight over the short term, but prices could be still vulnerable for a deeper drop, said Edward Moya, an analyst at OANDA.
Asia's crude imports lifted to a record high in July as the top importing region's two biggest buyers, China and India, continued to take large volumes of discounted Russian oil. A total of 27.92 million barrels per day, BPD, arrived in Asia in July, according to data compiled by Refinitiv Oil Research, eclipsing May's previous record high of 27.35 million barrels of oil per day and higher than June's 27.53 million barrels of oil per day. Much of the strength in Asia's imports can be put down to China, with Refinitiv estimating the world's biggest crude buyer saw arrivals of 12.04 million barrels of oil per day in July, the third consecutive month that imports have been above 12 million barrels of oil per day.
Moving on to the top news in the energy sector.
China approved more than 50 gigawatts (GW) of new coal power in the first half of 2023, research by environment group Greenpeace showed, with the world's top carbon polluter focused on energy security rather than cutting fossil fuel consumption. As scientists and environmentalists urge governments to make deeper emission cuts after record-breaking heat waves across the globe, the impact of extreme weather has spurred China to build even more coal-fired plants as it tries to counter the effects of drought on hydropower production and avoid power outages. China's government has put energy security and energy transition at odds with one another, said Greenpeace's Gao Yuhei, who led the research published on Thursday.
The United States remains confident that the Group of Seven's price cap on Russian oil is working to squeeze Moscow's revenues and stabilize energy markets despite a recent upturn in prices, a senior U.S. Treasury official said on Thursday. In remarks prepared for a London conference, Acting Assistant Secretary for Economic Policy Eric Van Nostrand hailed the price cap as a successful part of the multilateral sanctions regime imposed on Russia over its invasion of Ukraine, and said Washington and its partners were working to thwart any evasion. Our approach has struck at the heart of the Kremlin's most important cash cow. Before the war, oil revenues constituted about a third of the total Russian budget, but in 2023 that number has fallen to just 25%, he said in the prepared remarks. Next, we have the top news in metal markets. Refining rare earths for the green energy transition is hard. Just ask MP Materials and Lynas. The world's two biggest rare earths companies outside of China are facing challenges turning rock from their mines into the building blocks for magnets used across the global economy, from Apple's iPhone to Tesla's Model 3 to Lockheed Martin's F-35 fighter jet. The West's push to develop independent supplies of critical minerals took on greater urgency after Beijing imposed export controls last month on the strategic metals gallium and germanium, raising global fears that China could block exports of rare earths or processing technology next.
Prices of tin rose on Thursday after the International Tin Association confirmed a ban on mining by Myanmar's ethnic minority Wa militia from August 1. 3-month tin on the London Metal Exchange gained as much as 3.8% in the Asian morning trading session and was up 0.7% to $27,595 per metric ton by 0757 GMT. The most traded September tin contract on the Shanghai Futures Exchange ended daytime trade 1.3% higher to 229,920 yuan, $31,963.52 per metric ton.
We will now look at the top news in the agricultural sector.
Russia attacked Ukraine's main inland port across the Danube River from Romania on Wednesday, sending global food prices higher as it ramped up its use of force to prevent Ukraine from exporting grain. The drone attacks destroyed buildings in the port of Izmail and halted ships as they prepared to arrive there to load with Ukrainian grain in defiance of a de facto blockade Russia reimposed in mid-July. Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister Oleksandr Kubrakov said the Russian attacks damaged almost 40,000 tons of grain which had been destined for countries in Africa as well as China and Israel.
That is all for today's news on commodity markets. Stay tuned to TradeFlow News as we continue to provide you with more updates. We also invite you to follow us on Twitter at TradeFlow News, which allows you to watch our program on your mobile device or desktop to receive information from there.